We're early.
We're early?
Yes, we're early. Well, we're on time, but we were ready early. Hello, everybody!
Hi.
This never happens.
Woo.
What?
It's because we fixed our sound problems early, hopefully. Is the sound okay? Because, like,
It should be. It should be. I turned down a little bit because it was kind of loud. Yes.
Okay, so
ASMR.
hello, everyone. First of all, apologies for last week. I have been ill.
Yeah, Becky was kind of borderline delirious. She got
There's
some
no
sort of
borderline about it.
she got some sort of acute bronchitis thing. Like, she was fine in the morning, and then by the evening she was like really, really ill.
And then the following day, I was trying to go out, and I had no idea where I was.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was not fun.
No, I know it wasn't fun at all. But
That was
Becky
my
is
boss.
yes, boss's
Come
fault.
here, Becky. I need your help with some stuff.
I'm just
Gee,
realised you're
thanks.
kind of washed out with the lighting.
Yeah, well,
Yeah. Yeah. So
makes my skin look smoother.
makes it look whiter.
Becky's beauty tips.
Mm.
Extreme lighting.
Anyway, yeah, we're literally talking about nothing. But yeah, we went to a wedding last week as well, and then Becky is now almost better, but she may have to go out for a cough every so often, or now apparently.
All's good. We're here to talk about RPGs.
Yes, we are. We've got a few things that we've thought about. One of them is going to be wedding encounters. Oh dear. Because, as you know, we have been to a wedding, and it got me inspired. And, like, interesting things happened at that wedding. It was a very nice wedding, but it's like, ooh, yes, because we went to a fancy place, and da-da-da. So, yes, we'll be talking about that. We've also got a new patron list, which we'll do in a second.
Oh, you spoiled my whole lead-in for that.
Oh, I'm so sorry. But you went off coughing. I didn't know what to do.
All's well.
We've got some nice beers.
I'm not choking to death. Dave Doker's been commenting on loads of videos.
Hey,
Thank
Dave.
you, Dave. I've been reading your comments.
What do you think about the DW announcing Warhammer The Old World today? I did see a post about that. I don't 100% know what it means, but I'm assuming it means that the Old World like setting is being implemented into something. I'm not sure what GW is.
I
though,
didn't realise
sorry.
they'd ever left the old world. I thought Bogenhaven
apparently.
and Reich, whatever it's called, were all in old world. Is that wrong? I'm not.
Yeah. That is the Old World, but something has implemented the Old World back in, and I'm afraid I don't know what that is. I'm not a really big Warhammer fan. I do enjoy the old, now new system. The Old World for Miniatures Battles got... Oh, right, that's why I don't know about it. I don't play the miniatures game at all with Warhammer, so that would explain why I had no idea what that meant.
No,
but
can't
that's
afford that.
really cool. Yeah.
My biggest complaint about Warhammer miniatures games is because of the price of their models. They make everything a skirmish. Why is my voice dying the moment we went live?
I don't know. I do not know.
I'll try not to cough too much. Just give me a few minutes.
Okay. But that's cool. I don't know how they do it, because I honestly thought that Warhammer was like quite sort of small scenes, like small scale. I'm probably saying all the wrong things here.
Oh, the thing is, the backstory implies that, there should be massive battles and you should have thousands of minis down. But even the richest players can only afford 100-odd units, and, you can't do fantasy battles with Warhammer on a grand scale. For that, you really need to go to one of the 15mm systems, of which there are many out there. But the problem is, when you go to one that isn't Games Workshop, is then you can't find an opponent.
Well,
So what do you do? It's catch-22. So, you're kind of stuck with Warhammer if you're into the whole wargaming thing. You're pretty much stuck with Warhammer, and then things are very expensive. I'll say one thing for them, though. Their minis, the detail on their minis is really good. Like, they are amongst the best. I wouldn't call them the best, though. My favourite miniature companies, and I have to say that plurally, But you know, obviously, I'm a huge fan of the Reaper Bones line. Now, they do not have the detail of a lot of the other miniature companies, but what they do really well is they're A, affordable, and B, they do the big stuff. You know, they're giants, are proper giants on the table. They're they've got dragons that are a foot tall, and dragons should be big. You know, you go back to old school gaming, and dragons were a mini on the table that were this big, and you're like, well, that's doesn't really feel epic enough. But you get a Reaper Bones, and you know, you can get Caladrax that's like 18 inches long, and you know, the Tiamat model that's 18 inches high.
Yep.
No, 12 inches high, 18 inches wide. You know, that's what Dragon should be. So Reaper does the big stuff really well, and they also do the affordable stuff really well. But then there are some really great miniatures companies for high detail stuff. You know, like Atlantis Miniatures. I know you've just bought some Fighting Fantasy minis with the Atlantis Kickstarter. Now, the downside of, you know, those kind of small cottage industry companies, they're working in resin. Sounds a bit low. Okay, sorry, I'll come closer to the mic.
It's because Becky's kind of
dying,
softening her voice a bit so she doesn't cough.
Yeah. So I'll come nice and clear. I'll just do the whole show like this. Or maybe we could turn it up a bit.
Okay.
But yeah, no. I mean, the downside of those small cottage companies is, of course, it is quite expensive on a per miniature basis. But you'll never get another miniature that looks that amazing.
Yeah, and the thing was that there were kind of two strong opinions with this Kickstarter. One was, these are amazing. I'm happy to
Atlantis
invest.
Miniatures one.
Yeah, I'm happy to invest. Couple of £100 in. They had a few sets. I did the sort of build your own because I wasn't interested in all the miniatures and some like I'd already got. So, and then everyone else was like, nope, not buying them. Way too expensive. That's not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking usually for an Atlantis model, there'll be somewhere in the region of £6 a model, which is a lot more expensive than some mini companies. But I like them for the quality of them is just so, you know, it's beyond Games Workshop stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I think if I hadn't have bought a couple beforehand, I would have been more reluctant to spend that much. But you know, I've got 3 models. One of them I've finished. One of them is half done. No, I got 4. I beg your pardon. I got 4. The amount of detail as I was painting, it's amazing, and that's why I thought, I am willing to, you know.
But Games Workshop, I would say, are not as good as companies like that, those small cottage companies. I mean, Atlantis is one we know, but I mean, there are plenty of others in that same kind of field. I know a lot of people swear by a company called Otherworld Miniatures that do some D&D stuff. They're the only place I know that actually do Sturges, and I've been meaning to get some for years, but of course they're quite expensive. And so I've kind of held off doing it for a very long time now, because I wouldn't mind some Sturges, just because I've never managed to use one in a D&D adventure, because when we do our real life group we often use minis, and of course I don't have a Sturge mini. Or, you know, what you need is a swarm with Sturges. You can't just use 1 or 2, and that's a problem when you're buying expensive minis. You know, and it can be quite expensive to get a box set to have the appropriate number of them. So what my thinking on most of this is I generally use bones, but for a feature piece, if it's like a character feature piece, quite happy to go to one of the cottage companies like Atlantis, like Otherworld, and you know, that kind of firm. And then my feature characters will be, you know, look amazing and stuff. And also, you know, seeing as wargaming kind of led into this miniatures discussion, do not underestimate the power of having a really well painted, high detail, looks amazing miniature on a wargaming tabletop, because it will draw aggro like nothing else. If you kind of, you know, if you kind of protect it, and talk about it, big it up type thing, and you've got this amazing miniature, your opponent will really want to take that miniature out. And if it actually didn't cost that many points, and maybe it's not as heroic as you made out, but it just looks amazing, that is, part of the psychology really of wargaming. You can use that against your opponent.
Interesting. Well, another little topic that's come up recently as well, also about money, is Dragon Meat.
Oh, yes.
So, Dragon Meat have started doing, for this year, reserving game slots, which, as you've said, that's never really been a thing. You kind of turn up on the day at, what stupid o'clock in the morning.
Just to provide some context here for everyone, Dragon Meat is a UK convention that's held in London. It's a one-day convention. I've been to it quite a few times. Jason's been to it once. And I gave up trying to get a game at Dragon Meat years ago, because unless you were local to get there early enough for when the sign-up sheets came out, you can't do it. Because it's a single-day convention, I never wanted to get a hotel for it or anything like that. So you just couldn't get a game. So you'd go around the trade hall all day, or sit in one of the seminars or something, which is okay. Last time we went and picked up sponsors for Com+2, which was great for us, but not great as an RPG convention. I'd like to get a game in.
Yeah.
And I found that historically Dragon Meat was terrible for that, because the game sign-up sheets will go out first thing in the morning, and if you put your name down first, you get that slot.
Yeah, and for small conventions, like we've been to one called Concrete Cow, that can work, because
they actually have a better system now, I think.
Yeah, they do actually. But like we went there, and you have to. They're all kind of announced, right? Okay, we are now opening for game slots. You can come up, and there was some with like high priority or something who could go up first. So it was a bit like an airport.
Do is, if it's your first time there, you actually get priority and first pick. And so that I think it works quite well. If you're new and get first pick, and everyone else kind of. But the thing is, what they do is they these days they do the sign-ups ahead of each slot.
Yeah.
Whereas they used to just have the sign-ups out on a table, and you just go whenever. And that's kind of okay for a small convention. Concrete Cow's grown a bit, so they have a little more organisation to it to keep it fairer.
How many people go to it nowadays? Is it about 100?
No, I'd say. I'd say shy of 100, 50, 60 plus.
Yeah, okay. I just wondered how big it had
It's
got.
well known, but it's quite, it's not a massive convention by any stretch.
I think maybe because they do it twice a year, and it's quite a tight-knit community of like...
Well, they have their weekly, or is it bi-weekly group anyway?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Friends down the road go to it.
Oh, that's right. I didn't realise it was Concrete Cow as well.
It's the same club that runs Concrete Cow.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
So yeah, that happens in Milton Keynes. I think it's weekly. It might be bi-weekly. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
Bit of a trek for us to do on a weekly basis, but
yeah,
our friends down the road don't think so.
But anyway, because of how big Dragon Meat is getting now, so I think they've reached about 10,000 attendees.
More importantly is they've gotten more organised.
Yeah. And that was something that the main organiser, John, wanted to implement recently and kind of make it a bit more like the expo, but obviously it's not as big.
Who organises the expo, has only recently taken over Dragon Meat.
Oh, right. I thought he'd had it for longer. Okay.
Before him, it was Modiphius for a couple of years.
Ah, okay, makes sense.
Before Modiphius, it was, I don't know exactly who it was, but because that's when I started going to it, was just before Modiphius took it over. I went to the one the year before.
Right, okay.
So I only went to it the once under the original organisers. They handed it over to Modiphius.
Ah, okay.
And Modiphius had a learning process. Remember, the very first year, it felt so crowded because they hadn't made the walkways in the trade hall wide enough.
Oh.
Which caused massive amounts of congestion. But, it's a learning experience. You do your first con, you have to learn that,
Yeah.
And, the following year it was a lot better. But because of that, it actually felt not as busy.
Oh. But yeah, so this year, whilst we unfortunately can't go to it, or rather I can't go to it, you could if you really wanted to, but I can't. They are now charging for RPGs, and a few people are really annoyed about this.
And I think, yes!
Exactly, yes. Some of their arguments are, there's a door charge already, we're being kind of singled out, whereas if you do other stuff, you don't have to pay.
What other stuff?
Well, like
seminars and trade hall.
Yeah.
So you can't do trade hall for free. Have you ever managed to walk around a convention trade hall and not part with more cash?
Well, exactly.
It's not easy to do.
But also, I think that a couple of them are people who just go to roleplay. They're not really interested in anything else.
Yeah, and what they're really complaining about is it's going to cost more money. And yes, but the price is going to go up anyway. It's either that or it goes up on the door price.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but...
Well, interestingly, one of them said, I'm happy for it to go up on the door price, but I don't want to be charged extra for a role-playing game. Which is like, yes, but you're still paying the same amount.
The thing is, the role-playing games need to cover their own costs.
They do, absolutely. Like, there's the tables and the space
door
and hiring.
price is one thing, but yeah, when you... If you think about it from a convention organiser's perspective, now obviously... we organise a convention, but it's online, and we don't have these same issues. But I can understand the issues they're facing. They've got X amount of space. They have X amount of square foot. You're not going to get much more square footage without moving venue. Although, saying that, Dragon Meat has moved a few times. But, you've got X amount of square footage. And all of that has to be paid for. Now, Trade Hall pays for itself. The vendors pay money.
Yeah.
And places like, large places like the NEC, that's used by UK Games Experts. NEC is Britain's biggest convention centre. Things cost a lot of money.
Yeah, it's astonishing how much things cost
you
if you want to exhibit
internet
stuff.
connection at your stand, you're talking 5 digits.
Yeah.
You want a water cooler. Those things cost thousands to put in. And it's just NEC just print money at this point. But so you got to feel that's got to pay for itself. Now, as a convention organizer, you can get people through the door with just a trade hall. So why not fill up all of your available square footage with trade hall stands? Because that will pay for everything.
Yeah.
And you could say, well, the ticket price is covering everything. Well, it's not. Not if the people who are just going through the trade hall aren't using the space that's used by the RPGs.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I get it. I totally understand why, as an organizer, you would charge. Also, if you're putting in booking systems on, are they doing online booking, pre-attendance booking? I think they are this year, aren't they? They're doing pre-sales on the games, I think.
Yes, they are, but they're putting them out a little bit later. I think I saw a post about that.
So, who's paying for the web development? Now, I know from, but UK Games Expo hasn't had a great website for that in the past.
No. But it works.
It's functional. And I have spoken to them about sorting out the credit card gateway to make it more secure. And, if they were to come to me in a professional context,
then you'd want money.
I'd be charging at least 4 digits, probably 5.
Absolutely.
So who covers that cost?
But even without all of the logistical costs, charging a few quid for a game of, a convention that size, it makes a lot of sense because, yes, lots of people get through the door, but you also have to rely on people actually turning up to the games, which sometimes can be a problem.
And if people have parted with money, they're more likely to attend.
Exactly.
So never be the person who organises paintball or go-karting for your company.
Yeah, I did an escape room.
You will be shafted.
I did get all the money, but it took a while, so yeah.
Yeah. No, I've seen it before where people who've tried to organise stuff like that and just end up getting a really raw deal. And if you take money from people, they are more likely to attend.
Yeah.
And not be so ambivalent about it.
Yeah.
And it's only, you're only talking a few quid. And this is London, where a pint of beer costs £20.
Well, if you get a certain type of beer, but it is not very much money. The fact that you're in London, it's 4 hours of gameplay. As far I've not done any games there myself, but as far as I can tell, the quality of GMing there is very good overall.
I can't comment. I cannot get a game at Dragonmeet in the past, so this system I look forward to. Although I won't be going this year, hoping to next year and maybe get a game.
But the games do sound decent. So, you're going to a public place. It's an organised convention of 10,000 plus people. So, excuse me, pay a few quid.
Yeah, it's a couple of pounds. So anyway, rant over.
Yeah.
What are we meant to be talking about?
Patrons!
Oh my gosh. See, the chat's gone very quiet.
Yes,
Is it because our volume's really quiet? Is it because my coughing has turned everyone away?
No, I don't think so.
Let's talk about the most important people in the world, she
Yes.
says with her projecting voice on.
Yes, I can tell.
My coughing will resume shortly if I keep that up. So, these are the most... Look, we've got 2 copies. This is the old one, and it's old. So we're getting rid of it. We've got a new one. And it says... Russell Higgins, Jolly Mangina, Mark Frelfall, Brandon Fishwick, Omber, Dave Poirier, Fuke Enterprises, Nate Hanchan, AJ, Philip Bate, Elizabeth Chibraditkel, and David Gaskin. Thank you very much for supporting our channel.
Thank you so much. You are amazing people in our lives.
I want to get that to the point. It takes ages to read it out because that means we're making money and can retire.
Yeah.
And, actually do this every week.
Yeah, well, we'll get to the point where we'll just have it scrolling past the screen for the whole stream. Like the big
but
channels.
we're way too niche. Way too niche.
I know.
But thank you, seriously, thank you for your support on Patreon. Right, first topic. What are we actually meant to talk about today?
There's 4 things.
There are 4 things, right, okay. Begin. Number 1.
Wedding encounters.
Okay, I got nothing. Go ahead.
Wow, okay, fine.
Well, look, I think it's a fantastic idea because there's so much that can happen in a wedding that you can use. And, everyone's got wedding stories, and you can use that in your GMing as, part of your world. Use those wedding stories.
Yeah. I mean, you get the odd encounter of some sort of festival going on in an area or like a competition thing. But I think, as you said, that more things can go on at a wedding. So you've got lots of people gathered in one place, or maybe, sort of spread out over a big area. You've got 2, very central characters that will play some sort of role at some point, possibly. You've got all the people that are related to them, not just biologically, but, in terms of NPC, plot points. You've got the location itself. You've got the sort of the time of the season. So, of course, being
the
November.
theme of the wedding.
Yeah, the theme of the wedding. So, are you dressing up in a certain way like we're going to do for our wedding? Or is it going to be sort of, smart, or only certain people are allowed to go into the ceremony, and then other people, riff-raff, can just clap when they come out? Or is it something else? You've got the intrigue surrounding and the shifty people. Yeah, so many things you can do. In a wedding.
And I was just thinking, if you want inspiration for an adventure, then just Google wedding horror stories. I mean, you were saying those 2 central characters, the groom and the bride. You could have a whole adventure about something not being right and one of those characters being really upset and refusing to get married until it's sorted. Cue adventure. Or you can use like a real world horror story I read about once of another couple proposed the moment they exchanged vows. So the bride and the groom doing their thing, and then their kind of moment in the spotlight was stolen by the best man. proposing at that moment, kind of stealing the
Wow.
limelight of that day.
That's awful.
You know, there are so many things you could put into
there's
really mix
things like
up.
controversy between the two families, or there's some secret that kind of blows up, like kind of what happened at my parents' wedding.
Go on, you gotta explain that.
Oh well, that was. I mean, bear in mind it was a few decades ago. Things were more conservative back then, but basically, my parents got married legally before the actual ceremony, which took place a few months later.
But they were legally married in secret.
But they were legally married in secret, and especially the older generation, when they found out, my dad decided to just sort of stand up and announce it, to my mother's dismay.
During the speeches,
During the speeches. And she was like, "You don't have to say anything." It caused a lot of gasping and things like that. So yeah, little things like that you could put in. There's always drama as well of some sort, like maybe somebody wasn't invited but they turn up anyway, so that kind of stuff. Well, yeah, you get that quite a lot. I'm not big on wedding horror stories, but one I did read about wasn't even to do with the wedding itself, but more how it was paid for. So this bride was so adamant that her maid of honor and bridesmaids and various other people involved should pay all this money.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, because they are obligated to, because they are,
I've seen people charging for weddings.
Yeah,
like to attend our special day.
But I'm not talking like £20-30. I'm talking thousands of dollars. Yeah. Because, oh yes, you are a bridesmaid, therefore you should pay.
Very strict requirements of what people should wear.
Yep, that too.
And things like that. Like, we're having a themed wedding, we're doing steampunk, and like we're asking people to come in steampunk outfits, but we totally get that some people can't, and it's okay. Those, especially for the guys, because there's not as much resale value in the clothes. Indeed.
And even without all of that, a wedding, especially in a fantasy world, can cause a lot of attention from outside. It's a big gathering. It's several families coming together.
All the guilds in your city. The power players and the vampires.
But also, even just situationally, there's lots of noise and merriment. So even if you don't know about who is actually there, it can still attract your attention from outside.
And what if you've got a situation where the players are required to do what in a wedding? What would you set up that the players need to do? Because you've got this wedding as a background, right? But we're going to use this for an RPG session. One thing, the GM's got to generate quite a lot of NPCs. You're going to have to keep notes on who the NPCs are. Because I cannot keep track of your family, and it's smaller than mine. And I know you regularly ask me who my relatives are, so
well, my family.
As a GM, you've got to run both families. So
yes, true. I mean, you could always do it where the PCs are just sort of attending as guests, and maybe they know one person over the other, so you're kind of sitting on that side, and something happens, or they find out that the groom is going to secretly be poisoned and they have to stop it, that kind of thing. But I've heard of that being done before. You could make them a bit more involved. Maybe they know one of them so much that they actually want you to either help them out, or one thing I was thinking of which would work really nicely is they confide something in the PCs, so they suddenly spill out this secret just before something important, like the actual marriage, or I don't know, a toast or something, and then suddenly they die, or something dramatic happens, which renders them not able to interact with each other anymore. So that could work quite nicely. Or they could even be something as menial as there are a few bards providing the entertainment, but because of the fact they're doing that means they see everything going on,
or there's a
observe
pickpocket
stuff
in the audience. I think I would use that because you've got so much going on with that as your kind of world building setting. You've got this wedding with all this stuff happening. I think players will actually create a lot. If you just put a little bit of tension between some NPCs, players will create an adventure. So I think I'd throw in some fairly simple stuff. Like, one of the players is doing the rings, but they get, a drunk wedding guest sort of throws up on them or something, and they've got to sort their clothes out. Because actually, a menial quest, like sort out a new outfit, the way players react, they'll be ganking someone in a storage cupboard and stealing their clothes. The adventure will write itself.
Yeah, exactly.
If you just put a few small hurdles in the way of the players.
That's why I think in a situation like this, yes, there are NPCs and lots of them that you may or may not have to prepare for, but it's worth it because, as you said, once you've done that and you've set up those premises, things will write it themselves. Situations will happen by themselves.
Okay, we've had a comment from Scott.
Had a princess character, Commander, who was actively avoiding an arranged marriage so she could adventure.
Well, that's another thing. We didn't even think of the concept, but marriage is very different in different cultures around the world.
Yes, absolutely.
And, arranged marriages are a thing, and, some people are perfectly okay with that. Some people involved in it are in cultures where it happens, but aren't okay with the fact that they... and you get that family tension there, so that's an added complication that can happen.
Yeah, or there are things like, for example, we've got hello Steve, we've got in sort of the Western world, if you will, you sort of have a ceremony and a food type dance thing. But then, for example, places like India...
Oh, a wedding lasts a month.
A wedding lasts, at least several days. There's a bazillion people invited.
There's various semi-public parts of it, as you were, but there are loads of family obligations and all sorts. The brides need 4 or 5 dresses. Well, saris, but
so there are different traditions that happen, and maybe there's some sort of...
kind of gutted I didn't go to Ganga's wedding, actually, but it was in India.
Exactly,
I know you
it's a long way
wanted a
away.
Traditional Indian wedding, but to have it in India...
God, how dare
seriously, it's expensive.
But yeah, say if you had a wedding of that sort where you had kind of a bit more low profile events happening, that could be another opportunity for something happening in secret or some intrigue to go on which sets up something else and causes a domino effect.
I can see, like, if you started a campaign with a wedding, I can see that going into an intrigue campaign quite nicely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sort of begin it with that, and then it goes on from there.
Even just the thought of 2 families having to get along with each other.
Yeah. It's like the guild system, but in miniature and not as important people.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing, when we do an intrigue campaign, quite often we're dealing with affairs of state and, really important things. But if you start a campaign at a wedding of some not important people, you can have all that same intrigue, but in a very low-key way. And I wonder what that would actually do to an adventure. I'm kind of tempted to try it just to see what happens.
Yeah, it'd be quite
As
cool.
a GM, I think I'll be kind of like just, the bird on the branch, sort of looking down at the players, wondering what's going to happen.
Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah, because there's this whole thing now of a wedding is expensive. You must spend all this money.
The average price for a wedding in the UK is 36,000, 38,000, something like that.
And we're trying to...
Is about 50.
Well, we're trying to cut corners as much as we can, but yeah, there's the thing of wedding seems to equal this very, rich, well-off ceremony, lots of opulence and all this. But yeah, what if it's just 2 people, like, I don't know, a stable boy and a scullery maid who get married? There's a little sort of ceremony thing out in the yard, That could also work as well, but it could be quite different. In that, if
I thought eventful there. I mean, as a GM, you need to provide something that is essentially eventful for your session.
Yeah.
So if you've got something that's just like a very small affair, how would you introduce events into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's more opulence, it's more likely that more things are going on.
Well, more things going on, but actually that can be quite hard to describe as a GM. Like if you really want to set the scene as something opulent, and there's 8 jugglers in a scene.
Well, I don't necessarily mean entertainment, but as in the wine will be flowing. There's people wearing very lavish outfits and people come from all over type thing. Whereas if it's a small thing, maybe it's more difficult because it's local.
Right.
And...
Just think about this. Like, as we mentioned earlier, we're having a themed wedding, right? We're theming it steampunk.
Yes.
Now, the theme of a medieval wedding isn't necessarily medieval, especially if it's wealthy people.
Oh, definitely not.
They'd have all sorts of themes. So what if the theme, and this borrow a bit from Halloween here, what if the theme is like vampires and an actual vampire's there? Or, bugbears and monsters. Think about a fantasy world where you got hobgoblins and goblins. Maybe the theme is something that the goblins find offensive.
Well, yeah. I suppose if a human wore like a goblin mask and pretends to be a goblin, that could be seen as offensive because they're taller.
Especially if it's the whole we're gonna have a, I don't know, what would a medieval person call it? A goblins and goblets wedding.
It kind of reminds me of cultural appropriation, but fantasy.
Which kind of brings us on to another topic. I know we were thinking about discussing tonight, one that is always controversial and always results in people typing at the keyboard without listening. Yeah. And I know that Dawn McIntyre just put a video out on this earlier from Roll for Initiative channel, which is a channel I occasionally watch, and I haven't seen her video on this topic yet. I know I've done a few in the past though, and it has resulted in people rage quitting the conversation. And of course, by rage quitting, I mean commenting on a load of other videos and carrying the argument on in different places. Because that's what happens when people get angry on the internet.
I was gonna say, like, rage quitting I know in games, but I didn't think you could do it in comments.
Well, yes, because it's that kind of, I'm not talking to you anymore, and then just going on to a different video and being angry on that one instead, and then continuing that. If you never had that, I've had that.
Maybe a bit from Varg, but that's about it. Before he got banned.
There's a couple of comments. We're mostly well on this side, don't know about Chad, but we're mostly well, except I'm semi-dead.
Well, Becky is apparently coughing again, although weirdly...
I've been coughing a bit today.
Just before, she was fine.
I was fine just before, yeah.
Murder mystery wedding with daggers and shotguns and stuff might be fun. Yes, the idea sounds really fun to me.
Ooh,
I've never done a
murder
full
mystery wedding.
Well, the thing is that, again, if you've got a lot of people in one place, if somebody dies, like I mentioned earlier, especially in a dramatic fashion, then it kind of turns into a murder mystery intrigue, doesn't it?
What do you do if it's not the bride and the groom that die? Like it's, I don't know, the mother or...
The mother-in-law.
Or something, some aunt or something dies at the wedding. Do you carry on?
Well, it could...
You've spent thousands, and it's a guest who's died.
It could be the priest if it's religious, which means that the wedding can't carry on.
I think the most controversial thing to do there is if the wedding can carry on.
Yeah.
But someone dies. What does that mean? Like, you've spent thousands on your special day, and an aunt has the indignity to die on that day at the venue.
Yeah, well, there's
what
a few.
What do you do?
Yeah, there's a few different places you can kill a character off, but another one is during, say, the reception, or maybe when the cake is getting cut. So the marriage has already taken place, but then they die almost like as a vengeance thing of, yes, you're so happy, but then...
Or self-immolation.
Yes?
Like somebody's so angry over the wedding, they immolate themselves.
Why would they immolate themselves?
Well, people do it when they would rather die than face the consequences or something.
Yeah, but in a wedding setting, immolation
Mostly
feels a bit...
I believe Tibetan monks who do it, but...
Well, yeah, exactly, Tibetan monks, but, like, it's as if you would say self-decapitation.
Incidentally, China, we are not in any way condoning or endorsing your actions. We have nothing to say on that topic.
No, it seems a bit random.
And Tibet may or may not exist.
Unless, say, somebody does a Miss Havisham and accidentally falls into a...
Havisham?
You know, from Great Expectations. Charles Dickens?
I never read it. I'm culturally stupid.
No, you're not. But, no, there's a bit where there's this woman called Miss Havisham who confines herself to her room, but she always wears her wedding dress.
Really?
And yes, and she
Bit
lives...
like I'm going to be.
No, please don't be like Miss Havisham. She lives in this room. All the clocks in her stately home have been stopped at the time of the wedding. The wedding cake is festering in the background, and the rats are eating it and stuff, and there's cobwebs everywhere. And I can't remember exactly why, but I think her husband leaves her or something happens.
Wow.
So she can't
move past
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
That is a truly awesome setting for an RPG.
It is. But there's one bit, I believe, either she falls in or she's standing close to this massive fireplace with her wedding dress and it catches on it.
Mm-hmm.
She starts burning. She throws herself out of the window, and it's all very like. But yeah, what I was saying was that could work with self-immolation. Like somebody throws himself into a big fireplace, but apart from that,
well, if it's accidental, that's a completely different connotation.
Yeah, but with Charles Dickens, that happens at a very symbolic point in the story because
of course, yeah.
she had just been having an agitated conversation with the main character, and
you know what?
This
though?
kind of
we
thing had
didn't
come out.
Actually introduce the other topic that we led into with that big build-up.
No, we didn't. We went back to weddings again. Hello, Michael B. and Lord Morbius and James Breeden.
I'm alive.
Yes, we are all doing well. There's been some flooding in the UK, although we've been fine, apart from a few roads and disruptions and stuff. Becky is sort of dying a bit, but she's mostly better. Does the cake fester? Apparently in Charles Dickens it does.
Well, it would go off eventually. I mean, it's not like it's full of preservatives. It's just got a lot of sugar in.
I can't remember exactly how it's described, but
also, it
there's
depends on the cake as well as to
Yeah.
how long it will last. But they're no McDonald's burger, that's for sure.
But it's
will
like
go
in a
green.
corner of the room, and it's just all covered in cobwebs and stuff. And it's,
So, hello, waves animatedly from Lord Morbius. I'm
Hello,
going to wave
hello.
animatedly back. Right, so the other topic we were introducing is that ever controversial one, and could you read it out with the right wording, because there was a big discussion about how this should be worded.
I can if I can access the actual description of the video.
Oh right, I don't think we can from here without doing things.
Let's see if we can do it back here.
And I shall fill the dead air with absolute abject panic.
You could talk about the beer.
I could, but it's very nondescript.
It's
a
not
New
nondescript.
England IBA Brewdog versus Cloudwater
It's not.
collaboration.
It says stuff on the back.
There you go. I've read it.
But it says stuff on the back. It's a nice bit. Real world intolerances.
Real world. Yes. Should you use real world intolerances in your games? So this is things like
Sexism.
yeah, misogyny, homophobia, racism, transphobia, all that kind of stuff. And I would argue, no.
Okay.
Right. If you want to deal with these subjects, you can do. Fantasy gives you the tools. Or even sci-fi. The tools are there to do it. The thing is, if you actually want to raise these topics using these topics, if you're just doing racism in the world, for the sake of having racism because you want it gritty, and it's racism against black people, how does that make black people at your table feel? And if you have no black people, how welcome are they at your table when you're role-playing a racist setting? It's not. I want to get away from that kind of stuff. When I'm sat at a table, I don't want to deal with issues, at the table that are the same as issues faced in real life. And I'm sure that is the same for other players, at the table, who have their own whatever minority groups they're in or whatever they relate to. I just think that fantasy gives you alternative tools. Use a substitute.
Like what?
You can deal with the subject of prejudice by using blue-skinned dark elves. And it doesn't matter whether it's the dark elves that are being prejudiced against or if the dark elves are the ones being prejudiced. The point is, you've got substitutes. You can deal with the topic of isms, if you want to, in your games, without using an actual ism. Because if you are a player who is that ism, or if a player joins your game midway through who is of an ism that you're using in your game, then that's kind of horrible. You're reading Call of Cthulhu.
Yes, because...
And I'm hiccuping on this bit.
You are just slowing your speech a bit. Yes, but what I was thinking was, yes, you could have fantasy fine, and there are sort of stereotypes in fantasy where you got your dark elves, or in fantasy it's black elves and stuff. Where
I so hate gnomes.
Right. But then you've got the sort of trivial stuff like bloody elf type thing, where there's a bit
Wingnut.
of and things like that. But what about modern settings?
Okay.
And the reason
if you're
why
doing a historical setting, that's why you pull Call of Cthulhu out.
Well, yeah, because I'm trying to find, there is a specific section that talks about this in this book, which talks about sexism and racism and stuff like that. Because I've had a little bit in my scenarios. It's very subtle, but you know, for example, that there was a gentleman's club, and they were adamant no women should go in, which is obviously sexist. But at the time, that was kind of what happened.
As a GM, right?
So I was playing it historically.
If I had a gentleman's club in my game, no, I get it, because there's prejudices in this society, but what I'm essentially doing is some of the characters can't take part in this encounter.
Yes, that's true.
If you introduce that environment, that's what you're doing. You know, and 5e raises this topic, but in such a soft way, nobody ever noticed, and they did it with like the Dragonborn and the Tiefling.
Oh yeah,
is that it should be when a Dragonborn or Tiefling enters a town that's mostly human, then you know people are distrustful and stuff like that, and that is actually a tool I rarely see used by GMs, because we're so used to over the top fantasy and spells going off. But actually, if you read the rulebook, there's meant to be distrust of Dragonborn, and actually that +2 Constitution bonus comes with a side effect. And I just think if you want to use the topic of an ism as a plot point, I think it is better to use a substitute. Now, I think on something like Call of Cthulhu, I tend to gloss over sexism, and I don't see why I can't gloss over racism in the same way. I don't really think about race when I'm playing at all. Now that might be because at the moment we do actually have a very white group currently. Come back, Kevin, all is forgiven.
Can't find it. But yeah, I mean, like with the 80s campaign I ran, you know, I never had racism explicitly in the game or sexism as far as I'm aware, but at the same time I still had the sort of preconditioning of, okay, women only did certain roles, they were looked at in a certain way. There's the opportunity for a man to think, oh, they have no idea what they're talking about type thing. It didn't explicitly come up, but that premise in my mind was still there, if that made sense.
You kind of had that defaultism because you were thinking about, but that was the 80s, which was
like,
post the sexual revolution.
Well, it was, but it wasn't
by 2 decades.
Yeah, but bear in mind we did set the game in Virginia.
Yeah, but you could say, look, there are issues in the world today, right? There is racism in Britain, like you know. Think about Now, if I was doing a game in immediate post-referendum Britain, racism was kind of what that period is defined by. Those kind of 3 months, as it were, or so after the referendum, when the right wing thought that they were in power now, and they were, you know, smashing in shop windows and stuff, trying to recreate Kristallnacht. You know, if that was the setting for my game, then I think I don't know if I would ever want to run the game, but it's kind of too depressing. But if that was the setting for the game, post-referendum Britain, immediately after the referendum result, you've got right-wing parties marching down the street, smashing in windows of shops that are like Polish supermarkets and things like that. Then yes, that's a theme that's there. That's the theme of the game, and in that situation, it's completely justified. But if I'm doing a game about the Yellow King, which opens with a thunderstorm,
She's talking about
a tornado, that's the adventure. You don't then need to decorate that with racism and sexism.
No, and I thing is, I didn't. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's a bit like the way I think of an album or a piece of music as I'm running a certain game, in that it doesn't come into the game, but it's still there to help me with.
That's
the
where
theme
I
of it.
That's where I kind of don't want it, because it's defaultism. It's the same defaultism when I was doing that game and I was on Mars, and I've mentioned this story before. I was playing a character on Mars, but it was a very kind of steampunkish game.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind I was on Mars, and a player turned around and said, well, back then women didn't have rights. And I'm like, I'm on fucking Mars.
Yeah, but that's different, because that is an explicit way of saying women can't do this. Whereas, yes, there was the Gentleman's Club thing, but apart from that, I can't think of really any scenario where I have adamantly turned around and said to a character, you can't do this because of what you are. But it's still the premise of, back in the 80s or back in whatever, they did do it. I don't know, it kind of adds subconscious flavour, but at the same time I don't use it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, whereas I don't think of the 80s as an overtly sexist time.
No, but
You
again,
had
like I said,
systemic sexism.
Yeah, but like I said, it was Virginia. I mean, friggin' Virginia. Especially in the 80s. Bathroom bills.
Well, that was much more recent.
Well, yeah, I know, but they're a very conservative state, even for America,
Okay. But you yeah, but I still don't think, personally, unless it's the topic of the game purposefully so, like it's relevant to the quest, I don't think it has a place. Like, and you can say, yeah, I want this to really feel real. I want you to feel like you're in Virginia. But then what I'm really saying is, I want to be sexist. I want you to feel unwelcome. And what kind of experience does that make as a player? Like, going back to that Gentleman's Club, it's a classic example where okay, there's the whole thing of men playing women, women playing men, and getting confused between player and character. But you've got a Gentleman's Club where you're saying, okay, women can't go in here. Now, unless that serves some plot purpose, why are you using a Gentleman's Club?
Well,
is it because it's common of the era? No, I think that may have been a mistake without knowing the adventure. Unless it served.
You were in it.
I was in it? What adventure was this?
It was the Elgar one.
I don't remember being in a Gentleman's Club.
Yeah, what I decided to do, I think in the end, was, whilst it was a Gentleman's Club, I allowed the PCs to all go in, because otherwise, you'd be stuck outside.
Exactly, so...
And I can't remember exactly what I did, but I basically bent the rules, or the people were lenient, or something to that degree. But, yeah, so potentially I could change it, yes. But at the same time, I chose it because I looked at the location of that part of London in a lot of detail, and there was a Gentleman's Club. But also Elgar was part of this club, which is why I thought, okay, it's a pivotal...
You're doing a historical setting and very close to history.
Exactly, yeah.
And so then we're very much in the realms of, okay, if you're in a situation, say Elgar was a member of this club.
Yes, he was.
and you're using a real person, a historical figure, who's thankfully larger than life to the extent that he can be discussed in this way. Not a Joe Public kind of historical figure. This is somebody who was hugely famous even in their own day. You've put them in the game, and they are a member of a gentleman's club, and you're shadowing that, but at the same time you've introduced Cthulhu to that plot. Now I know the adventure you're talking about, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. Yes. I actually didn't realise at any point we're in a gentleman's club. I might have realised it back then, but my memory has dismissed it. My memory has dismissed it because I remember playing a female character. I don't remember it being a problem, and I don't remember getting angry about it. So obviously you handled it in a way that meant it wasn't a problem with whatever you did. But my approach to that is you've got Cthulhu and Hastor, if I remember, rising. Change it to a cafe. Just remove the issue. Because why have that issue there if it could be contentious when it's not fundamental to the plot? Because it wasn't. It didn't matter that it was a gentleman club, only that it was historically accurate. And you can always, when you're talking about the game afterwards, say, well, he was a member of a gentleman club, but I changed it to a cafe.
I think what I did was I came up with the idea, then after I'd made it, I thought, oh shit, that means women won't be able to go in. I literally didn't even realise, but then I thought, oh, historically that wouldn't happen. And then on the day I thought, I can't exactly remember how I did it because I was extremely tired, but I thought, well, I can't leave half of the characters out.
Hours. It might have been a private room above.
Well, yes. I seem
to recall it being a private
room.
There
was a private room, but I just can't remember how you got to it.
No, I can't remember the details. But the point is, we didn't go into the club itself.
Yeah, I think I managed to work around it.
Of doing that at all.
I'm sure you suggested without realising, and I thought, yes, I'll roll with that.
I may have actually inadvertently in the past circumvented an issue or a thing I disagreed with and moved it to a private room or something. I don't know. But
yeah, on the whole, I do absolutely agree with you, and I mean, this may sound really kind of social justice warrior or self-righteous or whatever, but I can't do the whole discrimination hate thing very well, even in a character. So it seems
That's
really
easy. Just imagine you're a Tory.
Well,
I'm joking. I'm sure there are many good Conservatives out there. I just aren't aware of them.
but it's like I can't do it very well. It feels very unnatural for me to do that. So therefore it feels not only extra work for me to put it into my game, but it feels kind of pointless because I won't be able to roleplay it very well, and then everyone else won't feel particularly comfortable depending on who they are and what setting. So it's like, why should I bother doing it? And yeah, I would never do it explicitly in the way that like, say for example, Kevin was there and maybe he was playing a dark elf or something. I would never explicitly get a load of humans to just single him out and beat him up type thing.
I would.
Well, the problem is it depends, but as in, like, I would never single somebody out in that way and kind of
because
play on who they are for plots,
there's one thing I can be sure of. You mentioned Kevin as an example here. Now, just for clarity for people who are watching, Kevin was a member of one of our RL groups. He moved away. He was a person of colour. Now
he is a person of colour. He's not died.
He's died dead to me because he moved up north. Now,
we miss you, Kevin, if you're watching.
He isn't. He's moved on.
Well, I have hope. Thank you.
Anyway. Now, there's one thing I know is that if I have a game world that's got racism in it, that Kevin understands that. Right, I understand that. Kevin understands that.
Right.
All right, there may be players at the table who don't, and I might be doing this setting deliberately for the benefit of those other players to give them some insight as to what it's like to suffer racism, and to do things right in front of them. Now, if Kevin chooses the darker player, I've created a world where there's racism to dark elves, then yes, I would do that to Kevin. However, that is never going to happen without some kind of session zero or some kind of understanding or conversation beforehand with Kevin that that's what I'm going to do and why.
But
Just
before...
couldn't happen without that conversation beforehand.
Yeah, but before you basically said you wouldn't do anything.
But I'm not going to do it based on the fact... I would never use a real world issue. Like, I wouldn't use the fact that either Kevin is a player or Kevin's character is black. Like, we have plenty of models that are painted black, Asian, and Caucasian in my model, because I just randomly choose skin colours when I paint a mini. Now, if we're using minis, quite often I don't pick the character based on skin colour. I may have played characters and skin colour not an issue at my table, and I don't want it to ever be an issue. But I will use fantasy parallels if I want to do a game, or when I do a game that covers these topics. I will use a parallel. I just don't use the real world issue. So
yeah, but the thing is, it
deal
is
with
still
the topic of prejudice. It's the same topic, whether you're dealing with the dark elf, whether you're dealing with racism, whether you're dealing with homophobia, transphobia, or any of the other things. It's the same issue.
Yeah, but to to me, whether it's fantasy or whether it's modern, if you're singling somebody out because of the colour of their skin, that's still racism.
Yes. So you're dealing with the topic of the ism, but not necessarily to the black player at the table. You're doing it based on a fantasy parallel that, and again, it's a topic that I would only deal with if we're saying, right, do we want, session zero, guys. That's what I'm talking about here. Session zero. That's
yeah.
If you want this in your world, you've got to talk to your players beforehand. Rules as written, it is in 5th edition.
I do want to go back to the chat, but Steve makes a very good point, especially as I've done this before. As a player, what about Star Wars no droids here? I played a droid. Yeah. There were loads of instances where people were like, "Fuck off! You're a droid," or "Your meaning you don't mean anything to us," or "Your opinion means nothing."
But this comes down to the issue of you've got to session zero that. Like if I'm playing 5th edition rules as written, and somebody wants to play Dragonborn, and I want to do rules as written. I need to session zero that and say, look, you could go somewhere and be unwelcome, but at the same time, as a GM, I need to make sure I'm entertaining that player in a situation where they're being closed down. I'm either entertaining or educating. If they want to experience what it's like to suffer that prejudice, and therefore I'm educating, then fine. But if they're just there to play and they want to be a Dragonborn, then I have to make sure that they are being entertained. Now, if it's necessary for the setting of plot consistency and everything else for them to experience prejudice, I mustn't close the player down. So if the player's trying to interact with NPCs, I have to enable that. I just have to do it in a way where that has that plot consistency.
Yeah, and I would do the same. Like, the most important thing is for PCs to feel involved and feel like they can actually do stuff. Whereas if you're putting up this huge barrier because of some theme, it's like, well, they're not going to enjoy the game anymore, so what's the point? Just for some thing in your world that happens to be, an underlying feeling is no.
And this quite often when I've seen these issues at the table, and honestly when I've seen people explain their approaches sometimes in forums, you can tell that actually it's just basically you're racist. You know.
Yeah. The only time I've ever seen, it's not even racism, is with Star Wars. So we like
The droids thing.
Yeah. So when I played the droid, we never talked about, oh, by the way, are you okay with being prejudiced? We all knew, because we were all big Star Wars fans, that droids are not organics, therefore they're treated lower. Like we all knew that, and my background was very kind of rising up from, you know, rebelling against the conforming droid programming stuff. So it was very, very
Your background was the Solo film, yes.
Basically, yeah. But this was before Solo.
Okay.
So if anything, I made it up before they did. But well, yeah, as I was saying with Lord Morbius's comment there, like, people can use things like, oh, bloody elves, oh, the Jawas are so stupid, or you know, little things like that, and I'm fine doing that as well.
The most important thing, I think, is like when I run a game, I try to think about what would happen if a player joined midway through. Like, if I want to use an ism, what would happen if a player joined midway through who happens to be that ism? Like, how awkward would that be?
Well, yes.
And that fundamentally is my point. Like, if you're going, okay, look, there are no gay people in this group, let's have a blah 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 world with homophobia, and we'll deal with the topic of it. And then a gay person joins, and let's say you don't know they're gay midway through, and this is why I don't use real world isms.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that there are some people who would be fine about it, and they're like, yeah, I'm gay, but I understand that it's a fictional world. But, you know, everybody's different. Everybody's threshold is different. Everyone wants to game for different reasons, whether it's just unwinding or escapism or whatever. So certain topics like, you know, transphobia, I wouldn't want to be in a game because it's too real life. But then there are people I know who don't want to play Cyberpunk because it's too real life. So
let's catch up on chat.
Yes. Session 0, people.
And
There's
then
lots of
what's
chat.
our next topic? Because I don't remember.
I will show you.
Let's have a recap on what's to come on Pear of Geeks, as we deal with topic that basically means everyone gives their opinion and nobody
yes, your game.
Oh.
Systems within systems.
Well, okay. Let's catch up on chat.
Yep. And then we're going to talk about this random thing you came up with, which I just wrote down, which was DMs changing character backstories without actually talking to the player about it.
Well, I think everyone knows what I'm going to say on that topic.
I don't. Am I a bit oblivious to something, Car? Right, so we have got up to this bit in the chat. I guess I'm reading the chat then. Okay, so Steve says, hell yes, but only if it's appropriate for the setting. Racism in 1930 Call of Cthulhu, for example, would be fine if players were warned beforehand, which is basically what we were saying. So, I mean, like I said, that, you know, there's maybe only the one thing, like the Gentleman's Club that I did, that could be seen as excluding players or discriminating, and again, I can't remember exactly why, but we worked around it, because my main concern was I do not want to just have a few players sitting there because I pre-made their characters for one thing, so I specifically made sure there were a few females as well as males in there. I therefore do not want to single out the female characters and make them just sit there while the male characters can do stuff, because that's just silly. So in some way we worked around it. But apart from that, no, we haven't done anything. Unfortunately, I wish I could find it, but I couldn't find it in any of those books for Call of Cthulhu. But the 7th edition, they've done a sort of a section on this kind of thing, so sexism and racism and how to put it into your games effectively. And I think it's quite good because it's saying, yes, historically these things happened, but we are now in the 21st century, so seriously, is basically what they're saying. My Call of Cthulhu investigator is insulin intolerant. I mean, I know a couple of people who have to take insulin, but yeah, cool. I mean, my ex is allergic to nuts, so yeah, cool. The only prejudice monstrous humanoids. Oh, the only prejudice monstrous humanoids should have is which player race is the most delicious. That beer's gone straight to my head. Yes, I agree. So they're like, yes, humans taste of chicken. The second South Park game, The Fractured But Whole, did a very funny snippet on Call of Cthulhu type stuff. Spoilers, by the way, if you're into South Park and the game and stuff. But basically what they did, they talked about, or rather they kind of brought up the whole thing of H.P. Lovecraft was massively racist, which he was. So what you had to do in the game was you had to fight, I believe it was Shub-Niggurath, or something, or maybe Yog-Sothoth, one of those two. And basically you had to, because of the way it works on the kind of the board thing, you can move your characters around a bit and then they fight turn basis. There were certain area effects that could kind of travel across certain areas of the grid. So what you had to do was make sure that the police officers, who were all white, so there was that bit in there as well, landed in the area field of Shub-Niggurath, so therefore they could then be sacrificed to Shub-Niggurath, and then Shub-Niggurath would be damaged because he just ingested a white person. So I thought that was extremely clever, and there was even one bit where the captain, chief police, goes, "Oh, he was a racist?" I can't remember the exact lines, but it was so funny. So yeah. There is the whole thing with H.P. Lovecraft as well being racist and sexist and all kinds of stuff, but obviously Call of Cthulhu has moved on a lot from his views. When I ran historical periods, says Michael B., only the bad people would exhibit strong sexism or racism. Others may exhibit minor behaviours, occasion, comment, etc. Yeah. I mean, another setting I can think of where I have kind of thought about, oh yeah, you know, is there sexism, is there racism, is Hollow Earth, because, of course, it's 1920s and 30s. And there is a bit of that, I think, in the kind of the core game. Is it on here somewhere? It is, but I can't see it. But anyway, there is a bit. There's kind of like a femme fatale role that you can play, like an actress. So, very periodic. You don't get to see a woman who goes hunting type thing. And it's like, I did think about that with the games I've run of that. I've only run a couple of games, but they were important because they were convention. And I thought to myself, well, it's very rigid in terms of the history, a bit too much for me. Because what if I get a female character who's also a female player, and they would much rather be, say, a, you know, not even a hunter, but somebody who's more pivotal to the actual game, whereas this femme fatale class is very kind of, yes, they have abilities, but they're obviously more damsel in distress type thing, and it's a very fine balance for me, because like I said, I like to think about the history and think about, like, okay, this is what people were treated like in a certain kind of era of time, but I never fully explicitly describe it. I just think about it, and for me that kind of helps set the scene. It's hard to explain, but for me it kind of makes my description a bit more vivid, in the same way that if I think of a certain album associated with an adventure or a scenario, then the same thing happens. Lord Morbius, hello. We never actually said hello to you. You're a little bit late. Ye have to keep an eye on city folk. Don't trust them. Always wanting to build highways through your farmstead or badger you about not wearing shoes. Yes, there is the whole cultural thing of the country bumpkin not liking the city folk, and there is a bit of that in, Lord of the Rings, don't go looking for trouble and trouble won't come to you, although I know that's very World War II based and stuff. But yes, there is sort of seclusion of communities and cultures and things, which I think kind of fits in more with the fantasy thing of bloody elf or something similar, where, if the cultures don't mix, then people are going to be thinking of stereotypes and stuff. And yeah, I don't know, sometimes the fantasy version is a bit softer maybe than the real life prejudice, but then it as I've said, it's still racism, it's still whatever, so people are different. Session 0. Yes, Steve, it's all down to how realistic you want your setting. If you don't want to include it, then don't. If you want a more historically accurate setting, then slap it in, but don't overdo it. Is slapping a gentle thing in Scotland? Maybe. Yes, no.
I brought you a drink.
Thank you, darling. I'm still going through the chat. When folks start role-playing racism, it's time to give them that Innsmouth look. I'm not big on the Innsmouth side of Cthulhu. I don't know if there's any racism involved in the whole fish people thing. I don't think there is. Because as I said, Lovecraft is very racist anyway. But he would see the fish people presumably as the aliens. So, yeah. But I see what you mean. You're being sort of satirical and stuff. Michael B says, realism and RP games are at cross purposes. Everyone incorporates fantasy or fantastic elements. Even ones like Top Secret are unrealistic. Well, it's kind of like what you were saying before. It's like, yes, you've got this Victorian or 1920s setting that's quite real, but at the same time, Cthulhu.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Mom says it's one of these stories. My top secret agent was on a mission so classified that not even my character knew what he was doing. Wait, that didn't come out right.
Thank you, Lord Morbius, for your contribution.
Steve Ross says, that's it, I'm rage quitting. Wow, Crendor is going to get such a swearing now. Who is that?
Crendor? I don't know. I'd have to Google that. Sounds like a word I've heard before, though.
I'm sorry. I'm not getting many references tonight, people.
Oh, dear.
Well, it's like the Warhammer thing. I literally forgot that Warhammer was a skirmish game, except for the 40k stuff.
No, that's skirmish as well. Again, you can't afford the minis.
Well, this is the thing. I knew about the 40k skirmish, and I knew about the Age of Sigmar skirmish, but for some reason, the other stuff I just blocked out of my mind. Because I think, oh yeah, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, that's obviously the role-playing game. Duh. Oh, I've scrolled a bit too far. Yes. The thing about historical settings is that not everybody is a stereotype. Sure, there are some sexist people in the background, but... Well, yes, of course, not everyone's a stereotype. Not
the game
really
scenario
is.
Could be dealing with the decent people of that era. Now, there's a good point.
What does he mean?
Well, like, you might have a world that's a setting that's very sexist, but that doesn't, like, let's say...
Oh, I see. So you're dealing with people who are genuinely progressive and...
You could be, because
yeah.
even, you can go as far back as you like. You will find examples of characters, real people, who were well ahead of their time.
I can think of one big example.
Go on.
Well, it goes into being trans and stuff, but I was thinking of the gender clinic in Berlin in the 1930s that was destroyed by the Nazis.
Had the whole book burning. The thing is, I learnt about that book burning in school, and I never learnt that it was the books for the trans clinic.
Well, of course, because
it wasn't part of the education.
Well, no, it still isn't really.
No.
Because you don't learn about that stuff.
I learned all about World War II, and I learned about the burning of the books. But
yeah.
I never learned what the books were.
I think, from what I remember, they said, it was sort of books about certain topics. But that was kind of it. And then obviously, yes,
didn't even
there
go
was
that far. It was a book burning, therefore bad. Books of knowledge.
You know, there were things like, and of course, the anti-Semitism and stuff. And yes, the gays were persecuted and they had to wear a pink triangle. But in terms of, this thing was here, and then the Nazis destroyed it, and all the work that went into it.
Put it into context in that gay people weren't exactly released into freedom at the end of the war because the Allies weren't any better in that era.
No.
Yeah. But anyway, moving on.
But anyway,
that's a bit too deep and dark even for me right now.
Yeah. Mike B says, also FYI, Gentleman's Club has a very different connotation in the US. Yes, I know.
Is it a knocking shop?
It's a gays bath spa thing.
Specifically for gay people?
I thought it was for gay men, the Gentleman's Club.
I don't know. I only know the English definition. I apologise for being English.
I mean, I'm doing a South Park reference again, but I thought that was where Butter's father went once. That was a really funny episode. Detective Butters accidentally finds out that his father goes to a gay bathhouse.
Right.
And then he sort of tells his mum, and his mum puts two and two together. She goes a bit crazy, tries to kill Butters.
Right.
He ends up surviving, and it's
the Butters is sweet and innocent the whole time.
Yes, precisely. No, there ain't.
Okay.
That was probably in reaction to something that we said, but I can't remember what that is at this point.
So Morby says, "Oh my God, the next I can't read.
The next same
Larry.
Jason will be suggesting that it's okay to be white. Joke.
It is not okay to be joke. Moving on, right? So we did the no droids here at the time actually, because I saw it out the corner of my eye. And indeed, please like and subscribe, etc. Or most importantly, actually hit the bell icon. I think that's the one that actually matters.
Yes, so you can get notifications. But we basically stream every Friday night, unless there is a problem.
Mostly.
Unless there is a problem. We've done so many South Park references this episode.
Mostly.
Unless she's dying or there's some other thing like I'm not here. But normally we stream every Friday night at 8 o'clock UK time. So we occasionally put out videos when we have time. We're not completely first world problems, life, etc. But yes. There's some more droid stuff. The We Don't Serve Their Kind. We know about that. Oh, interesting. Steve says, no, it wasn't. Lucas hadn't written them at that point. Now, there is a very good channel, if you're into Star Wars, called Star Wars Theory. And Star Wars Theory goes very in-depth into the movies and into the books and the canon and basically puts out theories. But one thing that is just one guy, I can't remember his name, but he has done this recent series. I don't think he's finished it yet. But he did an original script reading of episode 6.
Right.
Which was called Revenge of the Jedi.
Okay.
And it was the original George Lucas draft before it was changed.
Okay.
So
it was fixed by competent people.
Yeah, but it's interesting to look at the actual creative mindset of what George Lucas wanted, especially now because of the fact it's done J.J. Abrams and So it's interesting to see how it's changed and comparing and contrasting and
things. Whenever you make a movie, things change in that process. But what's the?
Well, all I'm saying is that George Lucas obviously had a lot of ideas, and a good chunk of them were changed. But it's interesting to see what his actual ideas were, because quite often they're not really referenced. I don't remember. I watched a few episodes of this like a few months ago.
Can't lead into that and not deliver a point.
Well, the Darth Vader outfit was far more menacing than it is now, for one thing.
Well, this was an episode 6 script, but he was already in episode 4.
Yeah, but overall, he wanted a much more menacing look for the mask and stuff that was kind of changed a bit. And...
Yeah, well, that's just evolution of a film as it gets made, really, isn't it? But
yes. Yes, Jawas are disgusting creatures.
What if your game includes voyeurism? How awkward would that be? I would suggest very.
Yeah. In any game setting, players should expect some people to love them, some people to hate them, and most people to be indifferent as they go about their lives.
I think most MPs end up hating the player characters, or vice versa.
You mean NPCs?
No.
MPs.
Oh, NPCs.
You sounded like you said MPs, and I got confused.
Most NPCs end up hating the player characters, or vice versa.
Well, it depends what they do, especially if they're murder hobos. Right, okay. Steve Ross, hi, playfully slapping our usual way for showing affection. I'm sure it is. Well, no, I was questioning him slapping something in, and it sounded quite forceful.
Michael B says the gentleman's club is generally referring to a high-end strip club.
Oh, right.
Now, I have heard gentleman's club refer to that over here, much the same as in the US. However, historically, that wouldn't have been the case.
No. But meanwhile, in the US, they call braces suspenders.
Women wear suspenders. What's that about? Seriously.
Well, anyone can wear suspenders how we see them, but it's the whole... These things over there...
Those are braces.
Are called
braces.
Suspenders.
Suspenders. Braces. Get it right, you American.
Because they suspend the trousers, I don't know, but when I first heard that was hilarious. That's the same here.
Yes.
Right, I'm going to take a short
Gentleman's
peek.
Club is actually a term which has changed me. Can you please tell me what the topic is before
yes,
because
yes.
I can't remember.
It's on this window here. Systems within systems, your game, basically.
Oh, well, yes, we can introduce... Well, yes. Okay, so there is a thing. We've started our next campaign. We just had the first episode, and this has gone into power saving mode. You may have noticed quite a low subscriber count on here tonight, because it's showing the subscriber count of Pear of Geeks 2, which is our live play channel, and it's in power save. Right, so Pear of Geeks 2 is our live play channel, and we are streaming a new game on Monday nights. I actually did manage to stream last Monday. There's some coughing in the stream. I apologise for that. There's going to be some in a moment as I keep talking. So I'm going to come closer to the microphone so I can talk in a softer voice and hopefully not trigger more. So, yes, we started a new game and we are playing this system here. It's been sat on the side here all night. Corporation. Except we aren't. We're actually playing first edition D&D. Except we're actually playing this system here, Corporation. Now that makes perfect sense if you've seen that particular first episode. So it was a fun thing, and the players loved it. And I hope session 2 is as enjoyable as the first.
What's going to power saving mode, sorry?
Sorry?
Power saving mode?
This.
Oh, right, cool.
I
got a bit worried then.
No. Your computer's all fine. It's all good.
But yes, it was a fantastic first session.
Yeah, the thing is, I remember the last campaign in the first session, and that was fantastic. And the fourth session was fantastic. But in between, there were 2 other sessions that I didn't do a great job of running.
Yeah, but that's
I'm
because
hoping I've grown.
you basically kind of forgot to prepare a few times.
Sometimes that works.
Yeah, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
And that is the problem when you run completely ad hoc, is that sometimes it doesn't work. Which is why I always hope to do a little bit of prep.
Yes.
We're going to play next, not actually this Monday, because one of the players isn't available, so it gives me a little more time to heal.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to play the Monday after. But it is definitely worth a watch. I mean, I don't think I've ever laughed as much in a session as that one. When the Scottish NPCs appeared.
I personally still didn't find that bit particularly funny, but other bits I found brilliantly funny.
It is one of the things I love about Corporation as a system is it's so over the top. It kind of gives you free license to be ridiculously over the top to an extreme. I mean, the body count in that episode, if I recall correctly, is 262 dead.
Where's the 62 come from?
And I think that's what the body count was when I said it.
You said about 200.
Okay. But it was such an afterthought, and that's how over the top Corporation is, that I don't even know how many died. Wow. You know, it was quite a tame session in terms of fatalities, I think, for Corporation.
It was quite tame. Meanwhile, the chat is getting busy. That's what we like.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Thank you. Keep talking. We'll catch up soon.
Steve. Oh, right. Sorry.
I love Corporation for that. But what I decided to do was I wanted to run Corporation, but I also wanted to get some love. I do love First Edition, not because it's a good system, because it obviously is terrible. And that's kind of what is the perfect companion to Corporation. So
what? Because Corporation's terrible.
No, but Corporation's ridiculous, so it can handle a ridiculous system, and the rules of First Edition are ridiculous. Thaco, come on. That was confusing people on the night.
Can I just say that I love the session so much that I put the summary of the session into the official Corporation Facebook group, and the author James Norbury said that was a great idea. Mixing the two together.
Yes.
So we have author approval.
It was very ridiculous. And I genuinely think I haven't laughed as much during a session as that.
Yeah, but the thing is, compared to the other
Especially
campaign,
online.
I didn't find the session that ridiculous.
Mm.
It was funny, and there were lots of really ridiculous things, but it wasn't so... For me, the problem with the original campaign was there were things that were just so unbelievably, obnoxiously ridiculous that it kind of just became cringy.
There's nothing wrong with my Kangaroo City.
I wasn't thinking of the Kangaroo City. There were other things, but this...
Hitler being called Jason.
Well, yes, that was one of them. I can't remember exactly, but there were things where I didn't laugh, I just cringed. Whereas this, yes, there were really stupid stereotypes, and but it was funny, and there wasn't actually that much that happened. All we did was we went to a convention. We did like a contest where everyone was disqualified, so we didn't even win. It was just other people were disqualified, and then we tried to play this game and didn't really get very far.
Yes,
but it still felt like we did a lot.
Yes, so. Okay, I mean, I haven't actually explained what the system in the system thing is yet.
Yes.
You seem more bowled over by that than me. Like, I just...
Yeah, but you're the same with my first Cthulhu session. You're like, that was the best first session I've ever played. It was amazing. And I'm like, okay, cool.
But
subjective.
It's like, so... To put this into context, the players went to a convention.
BlizzCon.
Yes, because Blizzard's been in the news, so of course I took the mick out of that heavily. Hearthstone players were locked into their hall because they weren't allowed out because too many were trying to leave.
It was so messy.
Very topical. Yes, yeah, there were numerous references to Blizzard and Hong Kong. Honestly, China, if you're watching this, Hong Kong may or may not exist, whatever you say. What? I don't want to get in trouble with Chinese spies or something, or be assassinated by the Chinese government.
They're not going to?
Seriously, if they watch that session, they might.
I mean, South Park completely took the piss out of China this season, so if anything, their eyes are fixed on them.
Yeah. Well, I'm all in the clear.
Yes.
Independence for Hong Kong.
Yes.
I'm probably now about to get sanctioned by YouTube.
Independence for Hong Kong, independence for Taiwan.
Okay, it was nice knowing you, YouTube. Right, so anyway, so there was some of that. And the reason they were going to BlizzCon is the characters of the players were massively into an MMO. That was the thing in Character Gen. I said all of your characters are really into an MMO, so that's a massively multiplayer.
You cannot say MMO properly. You say MMO.
What's your point?
Well, not that you're drunk, because you were doing it when you were sober as well. It's just funny. It's like MMO.
Yes.
MMO. A massively multiplayer online.
An MMOG.
MMOG.
MMOG. Yes. Massively multiplayer online role-playing game. So a new edition of the game comes out. So all of the work they've done in their characters previously is all kaput. It's no good anymore. You've got to start over. And it's day one. Day one of a new MMO. And so there's this competition at the convention to start off with 10,000 XP. And, well, you did get through to the final. We'll let people watch it if they really want to know on that one. But the twist, which I love, is that if you stayed home playing the game instead of entering the competition, as you would have had more XP.
Yes, you did troll that a little bit.
Yeah, lol.
But I didn't take it at face value because you set up the premise that we attended BlizzCon, so obviously that's what we were going to do.
Yeah,
we weren't just going to turn around and go, actually, I want to play at home. No.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all fine.
It's all fine. It's there's. I have no idea what the arc of this campaign is.
Well, with the Cthulhu game, obviously that's more serious. I had kind of had a chapter or a few episodes of like what the overall art would be, but then after that I didn't know either. I never planned the whole thing in advance because players can change stuff.
Yeah.
And
I'll sometimes talk to players about arcs for their characters and stuff. I certainly like to have an arc for my character defined before a campaign.
Yeah.
When I'm playing.
I like to as well. I do not know what that is, but I did see from Steve that he loved my accent.
Oh yes, you were doing a Scottish accent all night.
I was.
Mostly.
Mostly.
You did lose it at one point.
I did towards the very end when I was very tired, yes. But a Scot saying that my accent was good, I'm happy with that.
Alright, so let's catch up a little bit more on chat.
Yeah, actually that's a bit too far up. Yeah, so Scott says, I thought braces were worn on the forearm as light armour. Bracers, not braces.
Yes.
So braces you get in your teeth. But in the UK, braces also means those elastic things that old men wear to hold their trousers up.
Yes. Whereas bracers
are indeed
what you're talking about.
Or vem bracers.
Van braces.
Vem braces?
Van braces.
In the Lord of the Rings game, it was vem bracers.
Imagine a white van being driven
that's
like a
what it-
lunatic through London.
But that's what it was called. And then you had pauldrons and what the fuck these are called.
Now you're testing me.
But they had all this detail in there. So anyway,
Right.
Steve says, I saw it live. I was in notes. A really good session. Oh, live. I saw it live.
He saw it live. He was in knots, meaning he was laughing a lot.
Yes.
Yes.
I can't help but notice that my British friends who drive on the wrong side of the road are mocking my American friends for mispronouncing braces. Joke. It's not the wrong side of the road.
Statistically
and
speaking,
no, we're
you're
not.
less likely to crash by living in a country that drives on the left. I just want to point that out, that because most people
Yes.
are right-handed, therefore the side of the brain, blah 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 blah.
I thought you didn't
way
agree
more
with the
sense.
sides of the brain.
What?
You said before, oh, I don't agree that it's all the left side does this, the right side does that.
No. Right. There's too much emphasis placed on it. Generally,
okay.
people say, "Oh, it's all your creativity is all on this side," and it's like the brain is much more interconnected than people realise. But
Well, that's why you have things like synesthesia.
yes, now my point is though there is a bias that etc etc. Like some people have a strength on the right or strength on the left, and so on. Now, when it comes to driving, now I forget all the exact details of this, and I've had a few drinks clearly because I'm rambling. But basically, the side you're dominant on matters for safety. So you should live in a country that drives on the left if you want to have less road accidents. If, however, you're quite happy to crash and drive oversized, gas-guzzling, planet-destroying pickup trucks, then it doesn't really matter what side of the road you drive on. You're in a gas-guzzling pickup truck.
Well, you thought I drove a gas-guzzling pickup truck.
Wait, what?
When I first commented on your video, you thought I was Brian,
I
a gas
thought you were an
pickup
HGV
truck
driver, not
in a Route
pickup truck.
66 thing.
Going right back to the comment I made when we very first interacted.
I'm sure I'll bring that up at our wedding.
Wow, that's a reference and a half.
Yep.
More chat.
Yes, Steve has said Jason's accent was really good, by the way. Thank you. I had to do ADR once where I was Glaswegian. It was for a very bad movie called Wild Country, where the character was Glaswegian and sounds as irritating as it was. Lord Morb says the rules for corporation are so over the top and silly even Americans can use them. Well, yeah, I mean the Western Federation corporation are the Americans, which are even more over the top. Like, it really plays the whole American thing, but at the same time, yeah, everything. And the scary thing was when I GM'd at the expo for a whole group of players that were part of the same group that were all super experts on the rules.
That is such a rare thing
like,
with such an obscure system as well, isn't it?
It really surprised me. It's like, oh, you all play this together, do you? Okay, fuck. But they were saying, oh yeah, you can do this. So yes, it is kind of playing up to the American thing of guns and fuck.
I'm not getting a cold, Lord Morbius. I'm recovering from a cold.
Yes, she's a lot better than she was.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
this is why we weren't live last week.
They say that hugging your kitty cat helps with that. Well, firstly, she's not really been very interactive with us this evening, and also we don't want to give her anything.
Well, diseases rarely go between animals. When they do, they tend to be pandemics. Now, she's actually terrified of the sound of coughing.
Yeah, she thinks it's barking.
Yeah. She thinks I hate her, and I keep telling her off. It's like, no, I'm just ill.
Yeah, so but she's very neurotic. Michael B says the main difference between Bracer and Vambrace, I must have just read it wrong then on the video game, but I was playing on like an old TV that wasn't all HD and stuff, so there, is that the Bracer is a strap or sheath that covers the inside of an archer's arm to protect it while shooting, and Vambrace is a plate arm for the arm, correct? That I did know.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was pronounced Vembrace. Heh. Pauldrons. No, I already said pauldrons. Pauldrons are here. Greaves.
Yes,
Greaves. Haha. I knew an armor term that you'd forgotten.
I'm
yeah.
very ill.
In fact, Lord Morbius actually just said it there. Greaves are braces for the shins, yes. So what's an embrace then?
We're doing it without the tongues because I'm ill. I haven't had tongue in so long. We're just live streaming.
Wow. Google is my friend. Hey, Fuke.
Hello, Fuke. Woo.
I'm surprised you're this late. Are you not going to work today?
Yeah, normally very early and then disappear.
And then it's corporation easy to pick up for new players.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, it is, because the main premises of the game are quite easy to pick up. What I think is not easy to pick up are things that really the DMs would be explaining. So things like you have.
Let's do a quick corporation review.
Okay.
Okay. So.
Steve is asking us to get a room. No.
Gameplay mechanics, piece of cake.
Yeah.
Everything is you add a stat and a skill number, and then you roll under those two on 2d10. If you get a double 1, that's a crit. Double 0, that's a fail. Crit fail. When using some bits of equipment, if it's exceptional, that crit range can extend. That's it. That's corporation in a nutshell. Character gen does take a little while, because there's a lot of stuff that if you're experienced at corporation you don't need to know about. But like, you've got a process socket, an AI chip, an R drug, a histonomide, and atrophic DNA, synaptic modulation, independent cellular excision.
I do like
and
the
neural
excision,
stabilizers, and ambidexterity, and everyone gets that. And that needs explaining to people on the first time you play it.
Yep. There's also all the details with things like weapons. So every weapon has a different damage roll. You also have different types of weapons that involve different types of attack rolls. So if you've got a gun, for example, that will be different from a melee. But more than that, you've got different types of guns.
We'll get to that in a bit more detail.
And then grenades and...
In character generation, there are a few things that are a bit more vague than a normal RPG. For example, you don't choose a class, you make up a concept. Now, your concept might be sniper, or it might be... what's your concept on your current character?
Well, basically a hacker, if you want to go to
hacker.
that.
Okay, now one of them is team leader. You know, so you can make up a concept.
Although it's funny, because in the end they push me towards the mic to say, who's in charge here?
Now, one of the other characters' concept, I think he was more...
He's a gun happy...
No, gun enthusiast is his concept.
Enthusiast.
Right, so it's a little bit vague. So it's not defined classes in that sense. Then you get onto things like licenses. Now, that's sort of a headache in character generation, but can be quite fun in play.
Yeah.
So it's an extra step. So character gen can take a little while. There's more to explain,
And there's
especially as it's in a game. And there's trainings as well on top of that, which are just essentially 5e feats. But you're going to start with training. Now, on the weapons, quite a nice mechanic. Because you can have personal shields, energy shields around you, there are some weapons that go through shields, but don't go through armour so well, and there are other weapons that go through armour better.
Yeah, there are certain weapons that are EMP immune, others that are not.
Yeah, so the whole EMP side of the game we've never really used in our one-shots, but that could be more of a thing. Here's the thing, though. All of that stuff, that kind of knowledge of, lasers and shields and plasma weapons and armour and EMP, is kind of stuff that if your players have got the book and have read it, then you can use that in your campaigns and it's all great. really good. But usually with a system like this, it's only the GM that has the book.
Mm-hmm.
So you tend not to be able to use much of that stuff, is the reality. And the same is true, like Corporation is a game with a lot of splat books. Now as a GM, I have a fair number of these splat books. Not read that one yet. You know, that one actually is yours.
I got a PDF of this from James for Christmas.
Oh.
One time.
I bought you the powered book for Christmas one
Yes.
time.
Well, yeah, but he's the author, come on.
And so splat books are a huge issue in this kind of game because unless you've all read it, you're not really going to use it. But I love the splat books.
Yeah, they're fantastic. And there's general ones as well, like Machines of War. You've got the incorporated books. Can I also talk about the Christmas modules?
There are several.
There are several ridiculous Christmas one-shots, which I recommend. One of them I have run, which is the Cult of Christmas. It's not particularly complicated either. Like it even goes on to say, you know, it's designed for people who are going to have a few drinks. It even talks about that. And there's one called Gobble Gobble, which I won't give away what it is. I think there's a couple of others now that have been.
I think the
released.
name gives away what it is.
Maybe. But yeah, they're just quite simple but hilarious. They are Corporation with Christmas, and they're great for obviously Christmas one shots.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be as ridiculous and over the top as we run it. Like, well, as I tend to run it, I tend to run Corporation for humour.
Yes.
And ridiculousness. I think you could do dark and gritty just fine.
Yes,
the thing
definitely.
is,
and
as
I
a
wanted
system,
to, yeah.
it's set up such that you can be incredibly heroic. You can die in Corporation, it doesn't matter. It's temporary. You get your hit points back, unless you use mashing damage, in which case it can be very fatal. So it allows you to play, you know, kind of any way, and you know, there's a lot of backstory which is really cool. There's a lot of scope for doing things, and really my recommendation is, if you want to do a cyberpunk game, I've played Corporation several times over the last few years. I love it as a system. I love how stupidly ridiculous it allows me to be. But that isn't the only way to play it.
No. And before I met you, I did a few. I think I did one shot, and I tried to make up a campaign, but it didn't work out in the end because just everyone was all over the world. Which was darker, and that was the point, and I loved it because I was very, very into the whole dystopian cyberpunk.
Yeah.
La la la. I just got into it. And I thought, this is amazing. I love this, and yeah. So. Whilst I did run the Cult of Christmas as almost the second session of the one shot, and we kind of carried on, and yes, there were really stupid things in it because it's a very funny module. It did have that underlying dark stuff in there, which was cool. But it was Christmassy, so
you can do classic cyberpunk with this game.
Yeah.
But also you can do evil in a way that no other game really lets you do. Because everything is abstracted out to, you are corporate agents working for the paycheck. And your corporation inherently is about profit for your handful of shareholders or the CEO, whatever it is. Even if you work for a minor corporation, your job as a cybernetically enhanced corporate agent is essentially to protect the interests of the corporation. Inherently, you are playing that evil character in the group. Yeah. But you all are. Even if you're good, the purpose you are serving isn't. Yeah. And that's kind of what I love about that's kind of the dark twist of Corporation.
Yeah. And even the more good Corporation Comoros, which doesn't do the whole technological capitalism thing, can quite often be seen as even worse if you kind of twist the culture. And I believe I did run a game once where Comoros were the big bad, and it made a lot of sense as to why. So it's like, you can really twist everything and make it very grey and all that.
Yeah.
Yes, we've had a few more chats.
So I love Corporation as a system. Is it the best cyberpunk system out there? I have to say I've only played actual cyberpunk very long time ago.
See,
many
I've
decades.
never played it. Obviously, Red Box has just come out.
Yeah, the new Cyberpunk Red is. I'd like to try at some point. It's probably going to be a while because I'm currently playing Corporation. So I won't get to play it for a while, but I'd like to. Shadowrun. See, Shadowrun is a high crunch system.
I've just heard bad things about Shadowrun, so I've kind of
the setting's amazing. I love it. Mixing cyberpunk with fantasy,
orcs
basically.
And stuff,
the setting's great. I'll play the computer game of Shadowrun. Completed the first one. I'm on the final mission of the DLC. I never got round to finishing it. But I don't want to play it as an RPG because I did that once, and I've mentioned this before, but it took me 2 sessions to run across the room, and there's a lot of crunch there, which I find got in the way, whereas Corporation is the complete contrast to that. It's incredibly light. I think it's a great system.
Okay.
Let's catch up on chat.
Lord Morbius says either get a room or do it in 4K. We will bring that up in the next meeting. Fuchs says depression sucks. Yes, it does.
Aww.
I'm sorry to hear you're going through that. You've made me want to introduce Corporation to my current group, even though they have barely a year of gaming under their belt. Doesn't matter. I ran Corporation for somebody who barely plays, let alone has played Corporation, and he loved it.
The thing I'd say about Corporation is the whole setting. The year is 2500. Corporations run the world. And everything's done for profit. And I'm like, is this fantasy or reality?
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy?
Yeah.
Landslide.
It's certainly a very relatable. It's basically the real world with fictional weapons and cybernetics, some of which are now real.
Polarity Reversitizer?
Don't know the reference to that.
Fuchs has had a phone call, missed all your answers. Well, this is recorded, so you can watch it later. Damn that phone call being at the wrong time. Steve says, Becky and Jason, can I ask, what is your favourite genre for an RPG game?
Interesting. Well, it does vary, I have to say. Obviously, I like cyberpunk. I like dystopian. I like fantasy. Especially all the miniature painting that I do fantasy stuff. I decided long ago I would not start that with sci-fi. There's not enough shelves in the house. I like steampunk. The whole War of the Worlds things. I love genre. I am a sucker for anything pop culture or niche or everything. I tell you what I less enjoy is actually no. I love pure sci-fi as well. If I'm gonna start a new game, I kind of default the same as everyone to high fantasy as my first thought. Cyberpunk is kind of my second. But I don't know, sometimes you just get a plot idea and you go, oh, it's sci-fi, what shall I use? We don't have a true sci-fi system. Last time I did a true sci-fi game, remember the TI game we ran? We played an RPG set in the... So we played year and a half ago, nearly 2 years ago,
Jesus,
we
wow.
played a game of Twilight Imperium. So it's an all-day board game of galactic conquest, and then the following day we played an RPG set in the world that we'd board gamed the day before. Now, there wasn't a suitable RPG system for that, so we used Corporation as a mechanic system, and then just set it in our universe. So I don't know what, because the problem is when you think about pure sci-fi, there isn't a generic. Everything is always keyed to somebody's mythology, and that I think is part of the success of D&D, is it's managed to be generic, whereas I don't think you can be generic about sci-fi. Even though Traveller, the latest edition of Traveller, tries to be that, it's still Traveller.
I don't know, when you think of sci-fi, maybe very initially you think of space opera.
Yeah, but what defines that? There's a huge difference between Dune to
Star Wars.
Yeah. There isn't a generic sci-fi in the same way. You're always getting that story that comes along with it, because we don't have a cultural frame of reference, whereas everyone understands medieval history plus orcs.
Yes.
That is an interesting thought. Kind of makes me want to create it, but I don't know how you would. We don't have a common understanding of what sci-fi is. I think in a way that's kind of the point of sci-fi. It's to tell tales of and such about our world and moral equivalences and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's sort of the point of sci-fi. So you kind of have to tell that story. And the problem is you can't make a system that... Well, you can make a very generic system, but then you're always going to have to say, right, you can have this equipment from this book, but not that equipment. It wouldn't work. You can't do a generic sci-fi system, which is so far off topic. What's the chat say?
Well, can I say what my favourite genre is? I don't know. I literally don't know, because I have my sort of favourite overall system, which is Cthulhu, and I love the setting of Gaslight in particular. 1920s I'm not so bothered about, and it's like, most people run 1920s, and Gaslight I much prefer. World War Cthulhu type stuff I much prefer as well. But at the same time, I've not run or played in many games of that nature. I've run and played in much more D&D and cyberpunk and sci-fi, like Star Wars and stuff. So it's kind of difficult, because I think if I constantly played or persistently played the same genre over and over, I would get so bored, even if I love it, because I'm that kind of person where even if I like doing something at that time, I will eventually go, actually, I want to do something else now.
It's that creative urge takes over, doesn't it?
Yeah. So
I like the fact that we tend to do campaigns that are 10 to 12 sessions long instead of like ongoing.
Yeah,
perpetually.
I absolutely agree. I don't think I'd ever be able to be in or run, a 5-year... Some people run campaigns for 20 years, and I think, how on earth? But then I think of the same people as people in the same job for 20 years. It's like...
I did one for 10.
Yeah, I still don't get that either, frankly, but then I'm quite young, so maybe I will get that at some point, but it's like...
Took a few attempts to get one I could do for 10 years.
Yeah, but that's such a long period of time. Like 10, 20 years doing the same thing. That's a lot of time put into doing the same thing.
At the end of it, you get a carriage clock. Now, what's the chat?
Okay, I think there was a bit before this. Yes, there was. In Corporation, you are a corporate troubleshooter where trouble rears its ugly head, you shoot it.
That's not a bad description.
Unless you are specialising in melee, in which case you do that. Another swig of vodka, as I literally, presumably that says run to work. Okay. Thanks for being awesome, and that includes chat regulars like Scott and Morbius.
Damn straight.
Yes, and thank you, Fuke. We did read you out beforehand.
Yes, on our
Our news
awesome
sheet
people
that's
in the world.
very washed out in the lighting, so we can't read it.
Okay. But I can. It says Russell Higgins, Johnny Mangina, Mark Frelfall, Brandon Fishwick, Umber, Dave Poirier, Fuke Enterprises, Nate Hanshin, AJ Philip Bate, Elizabeth Chibreditko, and David Gaskin.
I felt short of breath just by listening to that.
Yeah, well, try doing it when your throat's blah, 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 blah.
Yes. We still have one more topic to go.
We do?
Technically, although it is, after the 2-hour mark, so...
I'm kind of struggling with the voice.
Yes.
I feel like my energy levels on this episode is not what I want it to be for a wonderful audience.
Okay.
Because...
Yes. Okay.
So...
Well, this seems like a natural place to stop if you're happy with that. My throat's starting to get dry as well.
Okay, mine started that way, but...
Yeah, but I have not caught this damn thing that everybody else is getting.
So, thank you very much for staying with us, bearing with my coughing and dying and stuff. You're all truly wonderful people, and we'll see you next Monday on POG 2.
Yes.
Failing that, Friday on POG 1.
We'll see you next week.
And I apologise for my illness, I think.
Bye!